You're on, Dolly, you're on the air with Angela?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I've been listening to the conversation, and I just wanted to say that I have a lot of family and friends who are in the medical profession, and they administer some very serious medications for pain. And they know and have worked with a lot of people for years and years. And frankly, they speak to me quite honestly about the attitudes and behaviors of people who deal with pain medication. And a lot of the medical professionals out there really don't have a lot of compassion for people's pain. And she says that the amount of medication that they're willing to give is very, very little compared to the amount of pain that people are suffering. And these are private conversations we have, but I think the two of us are very compassionate people, and we understand what pain is all about and how much suffering there is out there with human beings. And just to get to the point, my boyfriend has suffered from chronic pain for over 10 years, and I've seen him live through it. It's pretty awful.
Yeah. Dolly, thank you for sharing your perspective with us. We'll pick up that issue of pain when we come back on the other side of this break. We had a caller that just before the break who was talking about just how pervasive serious pain is in our society, part of the condition of the human race, and how schizophrenic, essentially, the medical profession has been with regard to opiates. 10 years ago, it was like, here, have all you want. And now it's like, no, you can't even have enough to stop the pain. And what role cannabis might play in this bizarre little psychodrama we're watching.
Yeah, so I've edited a lot of books for Dr. David Bierman, who is an addictionologist, pain medicine specialist, and cannabis doctor from California who's been on the topic for 25 years. What he points to a lot of the time is opiate phobia, which has been induced by the opiate epidemic, which of course was created by pharmaceutical companies selling opiates. So we have a situation now where we know people are dying from taking too much of this, and it's made doctors afraid of prescribing medicine to people who legitimately need it, and that's unfortunate. Something I mentioned last time too is we still have never actually scientifically proven that these single compound opiate drugs are safer than botanically diverse opium. So we don't actually know if maybe the real plant is less addictive than these hardcore drugs we've made.
I absolutely believe it is.
I do too.
I have smoked opium. I've eaten opium. It's completely different from the high that you get from the synthesized, from morphine, from heroin, from even codeine.
And this is something that's standard in the pharmaceutical industry. We have something called biopiracy, where they go and find these plants that are medicinal and have been used as medicines for thousands of years with lots of different cultures, and isolate out one compound, patent it, and make it a drug. Yeah. But we already know with cannabis, at least, that the best effects are coming from all of the compounds in the plant working in synergy together.
Right, the terpenes and all the different
cannabidiol. And it mitigates a lot of the effects. We have a pharmaceutical drug, which is pure THC, Marinol, a Schedule III drug, FDA approved since the 80s, and everybody who uses it tends to go straight to the flower afterwards because it's not right.
Right. So that's interesting. If raw opium was available for people with serious, that would be fascinating. That's a whole another can of worms or whatever. But
think of it this way though too. With salt, if you don't have salt already in food and you put it on top of your food, you can't ingest too much because it starts tasting bad to you.
Right. Right. So we have instinctive mechanisms to deal with this kind of stuff. There you go.
Yes. Hello. Say I'm not Jeff Sessions, but I was in treatment for alcoholism, and there was one or two people in treatment with me that primarily marijuana was the problem. Usually it was associated with alcohol, which is a much bigger problem. I know from experience that way back in the day I was smoking hash, which must be a high percentage of THC. My main concern is that I think there is a slight danger with marijuana, not like other drugs, but there is, and I'm concerned that maybe not enough regulations being put forth in in recreational marijuana. Now, medical marijuana is different, but that's just my opinion.
So you want to speak to abuse potential, basically?
Yeah, let's talk about addiction, because I don't think that we actually talk about addiction in a real way. Drugs are not magic, and they're not good and evil, and they don't just hook you magically. Most addiction is underlied by untreated trauma, people who have some sort of trauma from their childhood or from a past abuse that they're trying to numb down. If you get to anybody who's addicted to anything, you've seen the show Hoarders even, their problem almost always stems out of an untreated trauma. So I don't want us to actually look at drugs as if they're the problem so much as ignoring people's mental abuses. As far as cannabis being addictive, it's about as addictive as coffee. That is real, and it is a lot safer for people to numb their pain with other things, but we really need to have real conversations about abuse and trauma in this country and how to really treat addiction without just looking at drugs as the cause.
Are you familiar with the Rat Park studies?
No.
The psychologist I think he was in Minneapolis, did these studies back 15, 20 years ago, where he was looking at rats. This was back when Reagan was saying, just say no, right? And cocaine, this is your brain on cocaine. And he thought, all these studies on rats getting addicted to cocaine and heroin and other substances, they were all done with individual rats in 1 square foot cages. Mm-hmm. If I was put in a 1 square foot cage, I'd take all the heroin I could get. So he said, let's see how these rats are affected in their natural environment. So he built this rat park. It was like, a quarter of an acre, and it had little rat motels and places where rats could have sex and places where rats could raise their young and places where rats could play, and it had little spinning wheels, and nobody harassed them, and there were no predators. And then he put bottle of water with cocaine, bottle of water with heroin, take your choice rats. And even the rats that had been addicted to cocaine and heroin in the 1-by-1 cages, when they were moved into the rat park, stopped having any taste at all for those drugs and just drank the water.
Right. And
so it's not just trauma. It's like our entire society is traumatizing all of us, particularly economically. Anybody, who's like in the bottom third of our economy is experiencing ongoing trauma.
And I want to push back on the idea that the regulation we need more regulation. As a medical user, I've found that whenever there's more regulation, it actually just impairs my own personal access. But as far as recreational use, what is recreational use? To me, that is a category that was determined by the government to excise more taxes and to create more regulations. And really, if you are using cannabis because you're anxious in crowds or because you just want to relax after work, you've made a choice that's medically a lot safer for you. And if you were to ask Dennis Perrone, who passed away at the beginning of the year, who is the godfather of medical marijuana in California, all use is medical.